Storms in the UK that have the potential to cause amber or red warnings, where the advice is to change your travel plans and stay home to protect against the weather, are storms that get given names. This week, the UK has faced 3 of these storms in very quick succession, including our most severe storm in 30 years that produced winds of up to 122 miles per hour. That's the same wind speeds as a Category 3 hurricane. Roofs have been torn off, trees uprooted, homes evacuated due to floods, and as of filming this, thousands of people are still without power. My footage in this video shows just a tiny amount of the damage caused by these storms. It's clearly a challenging time for people, but how is our wildlife faring? Storms, particularly those that are worse than usual for the location, have a variety of impacts on wildlife. Nests can be knocked down from trees or flooded by approaching waters. Food sources can be swept away, dry valleys can be flooded, salty shorelines can be inundated with fresh water, and dangerous debris can fly around at high speeds. So, what methods do our animals use to cope with all of this? Well, firstly, by being able to sense a storm coming, animals can take early precautions to keep themselves safe. Sharks have a network of canals and pores in their skin, which helps them detect vibrations while they hunt. Oncoming storms cause changes to air pressure, which vibrates through the water column and informs sharks of approaching storms. They can then take a precaution of fleeing deep into offshore waters, where they'll be safe until the storm passes. After these storms, the ground across the UK has vegetation strewn all over. Food sources for animals like squirrels have been torn from trees, with nuts and berries blown away and crushed or exposed to rot. When feeling that a storm is coming on, a variety of animals like squirrels, rabbits and deer will start to forage frantically to build up energy reserves in anticipation of the bad weather. This means that they can shelter from the winds and rains for longer without having to go searching for food, and they can survive despite losing food sources. In fact, it's been found that the fattest house sparrows are the ones that survive major storms, but because they are slower, they are targeted by predators. This means that there's a trade-off. House sparrows need to be fat enough to survive storms, but not so much that they can't escape predators. Unfortunately, some species can't compensate for the changing conditions. Coastal animals like shrimps and crabs require a specific proportion of the water to contain salt. Runoff from floods reduces the amount of salt in local water, killing these animals, and also impacting species like wading birds that rely on them as a food source. But it's not all gloom. Scavenging animals can often find new sources of food amongst the devastation, and species like deer benefit from upturned trees, with their root, shrub and grass food sources being brought to the surface. Another way animals can handle storms is by seeking out shelter in microhabitats, which are smaller features within wider habitats that can feel the effect of storms less. Smaller animals can hide deep within thick underbrush, inside tree holes, and within nooks in rocks to take shelter. They will often seek areas that are closer to the ground, where the temperature can be a few degrees warmer than out in the air. Birds will often deliberately sit on the side of large trees that are sheltered from the wind direction, which keeps them both dry and out of the wind. In microhabitats, the decrease in wind speed can be pretty huge, so birds that stay put here don't tend to be so affected by the storm. These ducks likely utilised one of these strategies, hiding in the thick vegetation on the riverbanks to see out our recent storms, and are now back out foraging as if the storms never happened. Burrowing animals like badgers, snakes and mice can dig down to stay safe within underground burrows, but there's a risk involved in this. Flying debris can block the burrow entrance and potentially prevent escape. If the storm brings any flooding, then small mammals like hedgehogs and voles can get pushed out of their nests and drown in the floodwaters, which has a knock-on effect on their predators like barn owls. Microhabitats aren't foolproof either. Baby squirrels often get blown out of their nests during storms, with the lucky ones being rehabilitated by wildlife rescue organisations. Larger animals will instinctively seek out microhabitats that they can fit into. Horses and deer, like those free roaming in the New Forest, will take refuge in thick vegetation to get out of the high winds. Although deaths can occur, herds tend to have a high overall survival rate using this strategy. Some species register an oncoming storm and decide to change locations. Birds will track the change in air pressure, and different species will either speed up or postpone their migrations to avoid the oncoming storm. Others, like gulls, will choose to keep pace with the storm, flying alongside it in the least bad winds until it dies down. Unfortunately for some species, the strong winds can push them hundreds of miles from their home, which is why non-native species from across the world sometimes turn up in the UK. Flooding causes temporary bodies of water to crop up. These can be damaging for various invertebrate species, particularly after a winter storm. Those species overwintering in stationary pupae have been washed away and drowned, with no way to either sense or get out of the way of the storm. Other species, like amphibians, can benefit from the flooding. Temporary pools of water don't have predatory species like fish in them, so they can be a great spot to lay their eggs and have high offspring survival rates. Many species have evolved to handle storms, and their very biology can keep them safe. Lots of bird species will puff out their feathers, trapping heat against their body and preventing the cold air from reaching their skin. This has an insulating effect, like putting on a puffy jacket, and keeps the birds warm through the cold winds. Some species, like crows, are perching birds. When they perch on a branch and rest, their toes automatically lock around the branch, and so it takes less energy for them to sit gripping a branch than it does to move about. These species will pick a safe branch and just hunker down, waiting out the storm in a relatively energy-efficient way. Unfortunately for other species, their biology works against them. Wildflower meadows are particularly at risk during storms. Floods will drag in high-nutrient debris, which increases the nutrient content of the soil. Our rare native wildflowers are adapted to thrive in low-nutrient soils and will die out as a result of higher nutrients being added to their environment. Although our recent storms have impacted us greatly, when you are able to get outside safely again, just take a look around and you'll already spot plenty of our recovering wildlife species going about their lives again. I hope everyone watching has stayed safe through the storms, and if you want to learn more about some of the wildlife species that you're going to see out and about, then make sure to check out some of my other videos.